Wealth never begins with money. It always begins with thought. If you've started noticing that your inner voice sounds different than it used to, that's not a coincidence. It's the beginning of something powerful. The people who rise, the ones who create lasting wealth, all share this quiet but undeniable shift. At first, it's not loud or obvious, but it's there. That subtle change in how you speak to yourself, how you see your life, how you define what's possible, that's where everything starts. You used to question yourself constantly. You used to doubt every move, every idea. What if I fail? What if I'm not good enough? What if this doesn't work? Those were the thoughts that once circled in your mind like vultures, feeding on your hesitation, but now something's different. Now you ask a new kind of question. What if I succeed? What if this is my moment? What if I'm the one who breaks the cycle? These aren't just new thoughts. They're signs of a new identity forming. The inner voice that once whispered fear is being replaced by a voice that commands action. Most people never experience this transformation because they stay trapped in their old identity. They repeat the same doubts, the same stories, the same self-imposed limitations. And because their thoughts stay small, their life stays small. But when your thoughts begin to shift, your life begins to shift. You start making decisions not from fear, but from vision. You stop asking for permission and start building what you believe in, even if no one else can see it yet. That's not arrogance, that's alignment. This change might feel strange at first. You might notice that you no longer fit into conversations that once made you feel comfortable. You might feel a growing distance between who you were and who you're becoming. That discomfort is not a sign you're lost, it's a sign you're waking up. You're no longer a follower of life, you're starting to shape it. And that shift always starts inside. You begin to catch yourself in real time. Or you hear an old thought like, I can't do this, and you interrupt it, not out of habit, but out of decision. You replace it with a better one, I will figure this out. This is how the rich think. They don't avoid challenges. They rise to them. They don't let fear speak for them. They let faith lead them. And now you're starting to do the same. That's no accident. That's evolution. When your self-talk becomes stronger than the world's opinions, when you start to believe your own vision more than anyone else's doubts, you begin to move differently. You walk with quiet certainty. You act with intention. You speak less but mean more. Because deep down you know that the game has changed, not outside but inside. You've taken control of the most powerful tool you'll ever have, your own mind. And once your mind is aligned with wealth, your life begins to follow. Opportunities appear where there was once only fear. Possibilities open up where there used to be limits. You begin to attract what you are, not just what you want. That's how it works. The universe responds to energy, not desperation. And when your energy says, I know where I'm going, everything starts to move in your favor. So if you're seeing this change in yourself, if your thoughts are bolder, if your inner voice is clearer, if your mindset has shifted from hoping to deciding, don't ignore it. That's the foundation of all wealth, not money, not contacts, not luck, just the power to believe in yourself so deeply that the world has no choice but to follow your lead. This is where it all begins. Most people avoid discomfort like it's a plague. They run from it, numb it, escape it through distraction. But if you've started to lean into discomfort, not out of obligation, but out of choice, you're not falling behind, you're rising. That shift alone is a sign of transformation. It means you understand something most never do. Comfort is the enemy of growth. When you're always comfortable, you're not growing, you're surviving, you're stuck. You're choosing temporary peace over long-term progress. But the moment you choose discomfort for the sake of a higher goal, everything changes. Discomfort means you're stretching. It means you're doing something new, something uncertain. It means you're stepping out of what's familiar and stepping into what's possible. That's where wealth is built. Not in the predictable, not in the easy, but in the unknown. The ones who build something great are the ones who are willing to walk through fire. They're the ones who feel fear but move anyway. They don't wait to feel ready, they move when it matters. And when you start embracing that pain, the early mornings, the late nights, the awkward learning curves, the rejection, the sacrifices, it stops being suffering. It becomes fuel. Every time you keep going when you could quit, you gain something. Not just results, you gain identity. You become the kind of person who follows through, the kind of person who honors their vision more than their emotions. That kind of person cannot stay broke. That kind of person cannot be average, because wealth follows strength. Not the kind you show the world, but the kind you build in the dark. If discomfort no longer scares you, if it excites you, challenges you, awakens you, then you're on the right path. The path to wealth was never meant to be easy, but it's clear. And every time you choose the hard road over the easy one, you're proving to yourself and to life that you're worthy of more. You're not running from the fire anymore. You're walking through it, and you're coming out stronger on the other side. There comes a moment when you no longer need the noise. You stop chasing opinions. You stop needing validation. You stop trying to impress people who don't matter. If you've reached this point where silence feels more valuable than praise, it's not a loss, it's a gain. You're not pulling away from the world. You're pulling closer to yourself. This is one of the strongest signs that you're building wealth, because true wealth doesn't come from outside approval. It comes from internal clarity. When you stop explaining yourself to people who don't understand, when you stop announcing every move and start moving in silence, you regain your power. Because the more you talk, the more energy you leak. But when your vision becomes sacred, when you protect it instead of displaying it, you grow faster. Silence is not weakness. It's focus. It's protection. It's how you build something real without the pressure of being watched. You begin to value privacy over popularity. You no longer care if the world claps for you, because you're no longer performing. You're building. You're not chasing attention. You're chasing alignment. And in that space of quiet, your energy sharpens. Your thoughts deepen. Your discipline increases. This is the space where ideas become reality, where decisions get clear, where purpose takes root. You realize that success isn't about being seen. It's about being solid. The ones who make it don't broadcast every step. They refine it in silence. They don't post every win. They build 10 more. If you're no longer moved by noise, if peace feels richer than popularity, you've entered a rare space. A space where wealth is born, not through applause, but through intention. Not through visibility, but through vision. And when your vision is louder than the distractions around you, you're no longer just dreaming of wealth. You're already walking toward it with unshakable purpose. There is a point where your focus shifts from chasing money to creating value. This is one of the most powerful signs that you're stepping into the mindset of wealth. You no longer ask, how can I get paid? Instead, you ask, how can I solve a problem? That change may seem small, but it holds the entire foundation of success. Because money is not the cause, it's the effect. The true cause is value. The more value you create, the more money flows toward you. It's that simple and that powerful. When your thoughts start revolving around solutions, service, and contribution, you've left the scarcity mindset behind. Scarcity asks, what can I take? Wealth asks, what can I give that no one else is giving? And the people who give more value than anyone else, who go deeper, who serve better, who think smarter, they're the ones who rise every time. That's not just business. That's human nature. People pay for clarity. People pay for relief. People pay for excellence. And if you're learning how to deliver that, you're on the right road. You may not be rich yet, but if you've stopped thinking about quick wins and started thinking about long-term impact, you've already stepped into a different world. You're no longer driven by desperation. You're driven by purpose. And that purpose builds things that last: businesses, brands, systems, influence. It all starts with a simple question. Who do I help, and how do I do it better than anyone else? When your energy moves from greed to generosity, everything changes. You don't lose anything. You multiply everything, because people can feel the difference between someone who's trying to get rich at their expense and someone who's trying to enrich their lives. The world rewards those who make life easier, better, more meaningful. And if you've started thinking in those terms, you're not just on the path to wealth. You're becoming the kind of person wealth is drawn to. You've probably noticed something strange happening. The noise around you has faded, not because the world has changed, but because you have. You're alone more often now, and surprisingly, it doesn't feel empty. It feels necessary. It feels right. This isn't isolation. This isn't loneliness. It's elevation. When you begin to walk the path of wealth, solitude becomes less of a punishment and more of a privilege. Because the truth is, transformation happens in quiet places. Most people can't handle being alone with their thoughts. They need distraction. They need company. They need noise to drown out the silence. But silence is where the real work begins. It's where clarity rises. It's where discipline forms. It's where direction becomes undeniable. If you're finding yourself more comfortable in your own company, that's not a sign you're falling behind. It's a sign you're growing beyond what most people ever dare to experience. In solitude, you begin to think deeper. You begin to hear your intuition clearly. You're no longer pulled in 100 directions by other people's opinions or expectations. You no longer crave validation from the crowd. Instead, you crave results. You crave alignment. You crave execution. You begin to understand that the greatest breakthroughs are born in seasons where no one is watching and no one is clapping, and you're okay with that. Because you're not doing it for applause, you're doing it for freedom. This newfound comfort with being alone means you've stepped into self-leadership. You don't need noise to feel alive anymore. You don't need company to feel secure. Your goals, your purpose, your vision, that's enough. And when your vision becomes your companion, your solitude becomes your strength. That's the path few understand. But those who do walk it always find what others never will. So if you're walking more alone lately, not because you're lost, but because you're focused, know this: you're not falling behind. You're moving ahead. And the silence you're embracing now will echo as success later. There's a powerful shift that happens when you stop blaming and start taking full responsibility. If you've caught yourself no longer pointing fingers, no longer blaming your past, your environment, your upbringing, or even your luck, then you're experiencing something rare. You're stepping into ownership. And ownership is one of the strongest signs that you're aligning with wealth. Because the truth is, wealth does not respond to victims. It responds to creators. When you take responsibility, not just for your actions, but for your mindset, your results, your growth, you claim your power back. You're no longer waiting for the world to change. You're changing yourself. You're no longer hoping someone saves you. You're learning how to save yourself. That mental shift is the birthplace of freedom. It's uncomfortable at first because it forces you to confront your patterns, your choices, your excuses. But once you do, you realize you were never powerless. You were just unaware of how much control you actually had. Most people spend their lives waiting for a better time, a better opportunity, a better set of circumstances. But if you've stopped waiting and started acting, you're already ahead. Wealth follows people who move, not because they have perfect conditions, but because they refuse to stay still. And when you take ownership, you stop needing perfect. You start working with what you have. You start maximizing every day. Every moment becomes a choice to build or to blame. And you're starting to build. You've probably noticed that you're harder on yourself now, not in a cruel way, but in a responsible one. You hold yourself to a higher standard, not because someone told you to, but because you decided you're done living below your potential. That decision changes everything. It shifts your energy. It sharpens your focus. It rewrites your future. So if you're done with excuses, if you own your mistakes, your growth, your path, know this: you're not just thinking like a wealthy person, you're becoming one. Because true wealth doesn't begin with money. It begins with ownership of your life. When you begin to see time differently, everything in your life starts to shift. Most people waste time like they have an unlimited supply of it. They scroll, procrastinate, delay decisions, and treat each hour like it means nothing. But if you've started protecting your time, if you guard it the way others guard their money, that's a sign you're stepping into a new level of consciousness. Wealthy people don't just value money, they value minutes, because they understand that time is the one resource you can never get back. You've probably noticed that your schedule is tighter now. You're more selective with who you give your time to. You say no more often, not because you're rude, but because you're focused. You no longer commit to things that don't serve your purpose. You don't entertain distractions just to be polite. That shift in how you use your hours is not just about productivity. It's about identity. You're beginning to see yourself as someone whose time is valuable. And that belief alone changes how the world responds to you. You've likely started planning more, thinking ahead, setting priorities, moving with intention instead of impulse. That's not just good time management, that's a wealth mindset, because every minute invested with purpose compounds. Small actions done consistently over time create massive outcomes. The person who understands how to control their time will always control their future. They move differently. They build while others wait. They plant while others pause. And eventually they harvest what others only dreamed about. If you've started seeing time as your greatest asset, you're no longer on the sidelines. You're playing to win, and wealth flows to those who act with urgency, not anxiety. Those who understand that today is not just another day, it's a building block, a seed, a step. And when every hour becomes sacred, your life begins to reflect that standard. You no longer live by the clock, you live by your purpose. And that kind of life always leads to something greater. There comes a point when you no longer fear failure. You study it. You welcome it. You use it. If you've reached a place where mistakes no longer break you, but teach you, that's a sign of growth that few ever reach, because failure is not the end, it's information. And those who build wealth don't avoid failure, they refine through it. They know that every setback holds a lesson, every rejection contains feedback, and every obstacle reveals a skill they need to develop. Most people stop at failure. They take it personally. They see it as proof they're not good enough, smart enough, or lucky enough. But when you shift your mindset, failure stops being about identity and starts being about strategy. You stop asking, "What's wrong with me?" and start asking, "What can I learn from this?" That question alone turns losses into leverage. And if you've started doing that, examining your failures, adjusting your approach, taking notes instead of taking it personally, you're evolving. You're no longer trying to avoid discomfort. You're using it to get better. You're no longer scared of looking foolish because you know that growth never looks glamorous at the start. You're more concerned with progress than pride. And that humility, that willingness to fail forward, is a secret weapon. It builds wisdom. It sharpens instincts. It creates resilience that can't be taught in books or bought with money. If you've stopped seeing failure as the opposite of success and started seeing it as part of the process, you're already separating yourself from the crowd. Because most people are paralyzed by the fear of getting it wrong, but the ones who rise are the ones who keep moving, keep refining, and keep learning. You don't need a perfect plan. You need a committed mindset. And when you begin to use your failures instead of fearing them, you don't just get closer to wealth. You become the kind of person who can handle it when it arrives. There's a quiet shift that happens when you stop looking at problems as interruptions and start seeing them as invitations. If you've reached the point where you no longer panic in the face of pressure, but instead lean into it, you're developing something rare, mental toughness. And that toughness is not just admirable, it's essential, because wealth doesn't just require intelligence. It demands emotional strength. It demands the ability to stay calm in chaos, focused in uncertainty, and determined when everything feels like it's falling apart. Most people break under pressure. They freeze, complain, or retreat. But when you start responding to difficulty with, "What is this teaching me?" instead of, "Why is this happening to me?" you're not reacting anymore, you're rising. You're becoming someone who can carry the weight of bigger goals, bigger responsibilities, bigger rewards. Because wealth magnifies everything, including your mindset. If pressure crushes you now, it will destroy you later. But if you can grow under it, adapt through it, and stay grounded while others spiral, you're becoming the person your future will require. You've probably noticed you're not as easily shaken anymore. Things that used to derail you now barely throw you off course. That's not a small change. That's the foundation of power. Because calmness under pressure is a sign of control, and control is what allows you to make clear decisions when others are blinded by stress. The people who succeed long-term aren't the ones who avoid storms. They're the ones who learn to navigate them. If you're learning to breathe through setbacks, to think instead of react, to stay in motion even when it's hard, that's not just discipline. That's inner wealth. That inner wealth always precedes the outer kind, because once you become unshakable on the inside, nothing on the outside can stop your momentum. Problems will come, pressure will rise, but instead of being overwhelmed, you'll rise with it. And every time you do, you're proving to yourself and to life that you're built for more than just survival. You're built for success. At some point, you start to realize that your network matters more than your net worth. This isn't about collecting contacts or chasing popularity. It's about surrounding yourself with people who lift you higher, challenge you, and hold you accountable to your vision. If you've begun to carefully choose who you spend your time with, if you've started to distance yourself from negative influences and align with those who inspire growth, that's a clear sign you're on the path to wealth. Because success is rarely a solo journey, it's a collective effort fueled by the right relationships. When you invest your energy in relationships that fuel your ambition, you create a support system that pushes you beyond your limits. These are the people who believe in your potential even when you doubt yourself. They don't let you settle for less. They don't accept excuses. Instead, they remind you of your purpose and your power. Wealthy minds recognize that the quality of your circle shapes the quality of your results. Toxicity drains energy. Doubt kills momentum. But encouragement breeds courage. And courage is the currency of success. You've probably noticed that you no longer tolerate negativity. You avoid drama. You seek conversations that elevate, ideas that inspire, and actions that move forward. That shift is subtle but profound. It's the difference between stagnation and momentum. When your inner circle is aligned with your goals, every interaction becomes an opportunity for growth. Every connection becomes a stepping stone towards something greater. This is how wealth expands, not just in dollars, but in influence, wisdom, and fulfillment. If you're curating your community with intention, you're not just networking, you're building your future. Because the people you choose to walk with determine how far you'll go. And when you surround yourself with those who see your value and push you to be your best, you're no longer just dreaming of wealth. You're living it. This is the final sign. You're not alone. You're connected. And that connection is your power. The path to wealth is not just about what you build. It's about who you become along the way.